Welcome everybody. Today we are going to be talking about Emily in Paris.
Yeah.
Our characters are Emily, of course, and Gabriel. So we could talk about all of them, but we're going to focus on the main two.
Yes.
So if you haven't guessed, Emily's a 2.
Yes. And Gabriel's a 5.
Yeah. And something we wanted to cover before we get really into it is, as we've touched on in previous episodes, one thing that we need to take into consideration is the cultural and social aspects of these characters. So these two characters, although we know Emily is an American,
Right.
Gabrielle, and the rest of the characters reside and are French. So the French is almost like an umbrella over who they are as people. And that should be taken into consideration and context when we try to understand their type. So,
Right.
what do we say Emily is?
So Emily's a type 2.
Right, which is the helper.
Yeah. So she's very helpful.
Yeah, she goes where she's needed. She's super considerate of others.
Right.
And Gabrielle is a type 5.
Yeah.
And type 5s, as we know, are the thinking, the analysts. They're very much involved in research and knowing things. So we'll talk about Emily first. So what do we find in some of the first scenes?
So at the very beginning of the show, she is called to go to Paris to take this job that she's not prepared to do. Someone else, her boss, was supposed to go, and she's pregnant, so she can't do the job. And so they say, hey, Emily, why don't you take this job?
Right, and she doesn't know French.
Right, she doesn't know French. She's just like, yeah, I'll go where I'm needed. That sounds great. I'll definitely do this job that I'm not prepared for.
So she's thinking repressed.
Yes.
And we see that a lot, but definitely in decision making. It's like blow through feeling or thinking straight to feelings.
Exactly.
So she takes this job, not of her own accord, and not even really knowing that much about France and the culture. She just goes because she's people pleasing.
Yeah, exactly. She doesn't want to burden other people with her feelings, and she, like many 2s we see, just wants to stay positive, optimistic, not make it about them, but everything's gonna be good.
And pleasing, again, back to the pleasing. And she's in the compliance stance. So 2s are going to be going with, right? And we see this in almost every episode, right?
Yeah. So, and along with the compliant stance comes the need to earn and a duty-oriented feeling. So you see her, as she's working out this job, she really wants to do well. Not in a 3-way, but in a 2-way, which means she wants to make friends. She wants to people please. She wants everyone in the office to like her.
Yes. And what's so sad, as we all know, if you've seen it, hopefully you have, because there's going to be a lot of, mind-blowing pieces that we're going to be giving away. She wants to please to the point where they're so annoyed, It's France. They're so idealistic individually and as a country, and they're just annoyed with her. It's like the worst situation for a 2.
Yeah. I mean, she comes off so awkward and kind of gaudy to their opinions and their, romantic way of living.
Right. Everything has to have deep meaning. And she's coming in like not only her personality, but her fashion, like everything is loud and abrasive. And here I am. Let's do this together and hold hands while we're doing it.
She's so cheerful and perky. And they're kind of dismayed, and they start work late, and they don't, get right on things. It's very laid back.
Totally. So moving on to the heart triad. So like you mentioned, earning the right to recognition and value, be likable. We see a lot of confrontation with her boss, who we know is an 8. And so it's pretty much people please, and the door gets slammed in her face, quite often. But she keeps coming.
Yeah.
She doesn't take no for an answer, which is one of the things we love about 2s.
Yeah. Definitely.
And, the French class was one of the scenes.
Yeah, so she is making an effort to try to fit in, even though it's not working very well. So she's taking a French class to try to learn the language, which she doesn't really become successful at.
She's trying at least. I mean, there is effort there, but again, there's more feeling than actually doing and thinking in that process.
Right. We kind of see her efforts coming off awkward, obvious, the typical trying too hard.
Right. So where do we see her when she's going into stress and strength?
So moving into stress would be her going to 8 when she's out of touch with feelings. She's keeping herself busy work, doing, overworking, doing too many projects, agreeing to too many things.
Yeah, so we see that a lot when we do figure out that she has feelings for Gabriel, and she decides to pour into her work at that point. It's like work is all that matters in a two-way. I'm going to do, and please, like you said, take on new clients. Remember the famous fashion designer?
Right.
She ends up in a very overconfident way, kind of taking that whole scene over, taking the job over, and allowing her confidence in, I guess, pleasing, which ends up working out for them, thank goodness, take over the entire office.
Right. She really relies upon people to like her to kind of make her way in the world. So when she's meeting people, she just says yes to things because she knows she's relational.
Right.
So she thinks, well, that'll work out because I'll just befriend them and of course they'll like me.
And that's how she gets validation. So she's seeking validation from these yeses. And then when she doesn't get it, she's going into disintegration.
Right.
And so that stress is what we're talking about, that busy work, which kind of is cyclical. Because unless you're working on yourself as a 2, you're going to continue to make the same mistakes.
Right.
And then you're going to be busy and say yes. And then you're going to be in disintegration again, and you just can't get out of the 8.
Right.
And then what does it look like in strength?
So in strength, she is moving to 4, which means she is looking inward and asking, how do I feel?
Yeah.
What are my inner feelings? And how can I express myself better?
Right.
And be independent from other people liking me.
Right.
Basically.
And we don't see that as often as I think I would like to see. But I think we do see it in situations with her friend, Miss Mindy, her friend Mindy, who asks good questions. I feel like she's really a good person for Emily because she's asking her good questions.
Yeah.
She's helping her lean into purpose and place. Sometimes when Emily has taken it to this wild space.
Yeah, she really is a good friend for a type 2 because automatically she's supportive. She's a good listener. She pulls her along to things that she might not otherwise try.
Right. And checks her reality. You know, she often questions her reality and decision making, which Emily isn't great at.
Yeah.
Because she's constantly doing.
Yeah, she needs someone to help her with that thinking repression to bring her out of that.
Right.
Yeah.
We won't get into Mindy's type, but we are going to move on to Gabriel, who, again, we said is a type 5. So what are some of the scenes we're focusing on with him?
So Gabriel is a chef. He has always wanted to own his own restaurant.
Yes.
And his boss is finally ready to give that option. But he does not have the funds to buy the restaurant. And so there are several scenes where we see the issues with this coming up. His girlfriend wants to help out with this and give him the money. But his type 5 wants to be self-reliant.
Right.
Wants to make it on his own. He does not want someone else to be...
Right, his benefactor.
Yeah.
And also that is tied in with feelings.
Right.
If he takes money from someone who is tied in a feelings relationship, the purpose and place of his restaurant will be taken from him. It's almost like stolen in the mind of a 5 because he's worked so hard to do this from an internal space that if he allowed someone like a girlfriend to come over and just swoop him under his feet, it's almost as if everything he worked for is gone.
Right, because he's in the fear triad. And so he's seeing the issues here. Well, that's not really a safe decision for me.
Right.
Because I don't know if this relationship's going to last forever and I don't want to be indebted to these people. So I can't go that way. I need to protect myself and hold on to my things that keep me safe.
Exactly. So there's a lot going on in there. He is in the withdrawn stance because he's a 5. So We see him again going inward, definitely making decisions internally, not discussing them. There's no verbal processing going on, of course.
Right.
It's all internal. So he really needs someone outside of himself to see something that he doesn't see.
Yeah, exactly. He's very cares about knowledge, facts. He's probably the kind of person that is going to make spreadsheets about this.
Yes.
And look
Pros
at
and
the
cons.
details, you know.
And if we think about Gabriel, like, he's been doing this for a while. He's not 18, you know?
Right.
Like, he's been doing this for a long time as an adult. He knows what he's doing, but he has never made the leap because anytime he does, his fear takes control. And we see this in a minor way, but we can assume that it's been going on for a long time.
Yeah, well, he is an amazing chef. He has the experience. In fact, when we first, one of the first scenes that we see him in, Emily goes to the restaurant.
Yes.
And she's
With
eating
Mindy.
out with Mindy and doesn't know he's the chef there.
Because she's already met him once when she went to the wrong floor.
Yeah.
And that was a funny scene because it's like, it's the fourth floor. No, the ground floor doesn't count. It's like learning all these French things that you should already know, and you're already annoying me.
Yeah, exactly.
So she's at the restaurant.
And in her American way, well, she's going to send the food back and get what she wants.
Because she thinks it's made incorrectly.
Yes.
Which is an interesting decision made by her
Yeah.
in that moment. It's almost like a good power play for her type.
Yeah, right. And so they finally, call the chef out. And he's like, oh no, this is made right. You need
Surprise!
to taste it. And so finally she does taste it, and it's amazing and made perfect.
And it demonstrates his, not intuitive, but his knowledge of his own self. Like, he knows from an inward space that he is doing the things that he does very well.
Right.
And so he counts on that. And he always will throughout the entire, how many seasons? 3 seasons now. He's always going to count on himself.
Yeah, as fives do.
And so in the head triad, we see him again thinking. So going back to the restaurant, even when he's given the option to kind of jump out, leap out, do his own thing, he's so stuck in thinking that he can't even carve his way out into something better for himself, for maybe his inner circle, because he's stuck. And like you said, fear surrounds that space.
Yeah. So we do see him moving into strength later on when he does find a business investor to help him out with the restaurant who's not related to him or in any way.
Right. And he's bold.
Right.
Antoine, right?
Yeah. So Antoine comes in, he's checking in on the chef. What are we going to be serving tonight for this practice round of the restaurant? And he says, well, I want to make this Normandy fish dish because I'm from Normandy. And Antoine says, well, I don't want you to make that. I want you to make something French that's a little more classic,
popular.
And so the night goes on, and Gabriel heads with the Normandy fish dish, which surprises everybody, but Antoine respects him for it.
Yes.
He says, that was great. I'm glad you stuck with your gut, and which got triad. 8 is his movement to strength.
So that's the way Antoine understood it.
Yeah.
But as we know, Gabriel was focusing on thinking through and possibly even going into disintegration in that move.
Yeah.
There could have been a little disintegration because 7s, as we know, are born entrepreneurs. They understand themselves. They go for things even when it's super risky, which wouldn't be him normally. But sometimes disintegration, at least for a 5, could lead into something really good because that risk is kind of what they need.
Yeah, 5s are the opposite of a risk taker. So their move to 7 looks very strange. It almost looks super reckless.
Yeah.
Because they're not used to being in that space of taking risks.
However, in this move, because we have a strong, confident 8 as his investor, like you said, he was speaking into it as an instinct because that's the way that he moves throughout the world.
Yeah.
And Gabrielle was understanding it as a trust thing, I think, moving out of fear and trusting someone who understands the world, unlike maybe the girlfriend who was just going to save him, who had money, but someone who understands the world, who respected restauranteering.
Right.
And empowered him by his compliment.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're now going to talk about the relational side of the 2 characters. What do we love about these 2?
Well, they pull different things out of each other as being in different stances and different triads.
Yes.
So the withdrawn head triad is going to kind of ground Emily. So when she's attracted to him, it's because, you know, he's a safe guy who's reliable, who's helpful. He helps her in many scenarios at the apartment, you know, when her shower goes out and she can't speak French. He helps her bring packages up. I mean, he's just a very substantial, reliable guy.
Right. Very capable of just being there.
Yeah.
And then in turn, she draws him out.
Exactly.
So she draws him into more riskier spaces, being more daring, going into his 8, you know, being strong in what he's doing. I mean, she was the first one to believe in him.
Right.
She's the one that brought the investor to Gabriel.
Right.
And so even though she doesn't know a lot about restauranteering, she knew a lot about marketing and she knows about food. And so for her to believe in him, even without a relational aspect, even though we knew that was going on, that was really key in defining their relationship from the beginning.
Yeah, exactly.
Some of the things that we find they both need in self-care, we'll talk about Emily first, is the question that we always say about twos is, what is mine to do? Is this mine to do?
Right. That's such a good boundaries question to help them think, stop and think, okay, why am I doing this? Is this mine to do? Or could someone else do this?
Right. And I mean, and thinking about it through the Emily lens, so many times, even though she was trying to build relationship and do things in her people-pleasing way, oftentimes she got into trouble. And there's many episodes where we see the boss say, Emily!
Yeah, she gets way in over her head because she's trying to do multiple things that are not hers to do.
Exactly. And she even ends up hurting people's feelings. I mean, she does the exact opposite of what she's trying to do by not asking good questions like this.
Yeah, and not seeing that, what if someone else did this? What would happen?
Yeah, exactly. And what's another good question we say twos should have?
What am I feeling, or how am I feeling? Because they're, even though they're in the feelings heart triad, they're not often in touch with their own feelings. So they're spending time on everybody else's feelings.
Right.
And not, oh, I actually have feelings and needs as well.
And they can so get bypassed, especially if you have past of shame around feelings, like serving yourself. There's so much shame built around that, depending on your culture, your tradition. But it is so key, especially for twos, to kind of push through that and work through it, you know, so that you can service yourself. It's probably one of the healthiest ways to be able to serve those around you is by asking first, like, what am I feeling?
Yeah.
What am I needing right now?
Right. And then having a trusted friend, like she has Mindy.
Yes.
Who's a great listener, who supports her. Twos really need a person in their life. They are not single flyers. They need people, and especially someone who's going to kind of do a reality check.
Yeah.
You know, what's going on here?
Yeah, especially for that. And again, remember that twos are in the compliance stance, so they are verbal processors.
Right.
And if they don't have a friend, they're going to basically decompartmentalize. They need to have a way to flush it out verbally. And that's going to be with a trusted friend, definitely in the inner circle. So for sure.
Right. Yeah.
And then fives. What are some of the self-care things that we have for fives?
Well, fives happen to be doing repressed. So for self-care, we need them to get out there, push themselves, maybe with a friend, with a person, do a hike, you know.
Right.
Move their bodies.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I was reading about something having to do with fives, and fives really want someone that appreciates the knowledge they have. You know, so when you're around this person, if you have a five in your life, the best thing you can do is truly listen, not just hear. There's a difference, right? Listening is reciprocal. It's an active oriented way of communicating. whereas hearing is just one of your 5 senses.
Right. And 5s are super passionate about certain things. And so if you can key into that and, ask them questions about what they're passionate about, they would love to just talk your ear off forever.
And that's the person, if you are a 5, that you want to take on your hikes, on your workouts, the one that you want to deeper connect with because they're already into you.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think we see this in both of the characters. She's very much listening to him, and he's very much attentive to wanting to be that person for her.
Yeah.
And I think that they feel that differently than they feel it with other people, which is why they romantically connect.
Right.
Which doesn't always happen, but we hope that for people.
Yeah.
So I think that's all.
Yeah.
Anything we missed?
Tips.
Yeah, so always about self-care, as you know. We care about you getting to know your number. Through that, you find your purpose and you deeply connect to your inner circle. If you have questions, always feel free to DM us, contact us, any way you can to reach out. We're here.